And appreciate everyone being here this morning. Thank you for your time. It is, I guess, today's our 81st game, right? So about 3:30 this afternoon, if the pitch clock and all the things we do work, we'll be at the halfway point of the season. I want to frame up a couple of things, and really, but also look forward to a wide-ranging conversation about anything that the group wants to talk about. But I talked about this, I think, on the day that before opening day last time I talked with you, but we have three primary objectives driving our strategy here and how I think about this business. First is to win more baseball games, is to put a better product on the field, and that is, I think we all know that's a painful process right now, but we're certainly committed to doing what it takes to get back to form and to compete again. Second is to secure the future in Kansas City. At the heart of that is our stadium and ballpark district project that we've been talking about. There's other things involved in that as well, really more about media strategy, making sure our fans have access, and there's other things going on in Major League Baseball that I think also contribute to securing the future for a franchise like ours in Kansas City. And the third is to use this platform and this brand to do good things in the community. And that's the Urban Youth Academy, that's Royals Charities, that's cause marketing with our partners around town. That's nothing new for the Royals. It goes back to our founder, Ewing Kaufman. We certainly would like to take that to another level. So let's first talk about baseball. I feel accountable for where we are right now in our baseball team. I would just tell you that we are committed to do what it takes to return to form, to develop a playoff caliber team here in Kansas City. We made meaningful changes both on and off the field last year that were necessary, and sometimes this is, as we've said before, this is a real year of evaluation, and that evaluation right now is painful in that we've committed to a young group. We obviously we've got some pieces of the puzzle that need to be added. I look forward to the second half of the year for further evaluation, for further development on the part of our team. We might see some new faces. I have great empathy for our fans. I'm a fan. I have to separate a couple parts of my brain as a fan and as an owner with accountability for results on the field. But I have great empathy for fans. The other thing I would say is we have great fans here in Kansas City. We just need to give them something to cheer about. I look at the Reds right now. They win 10. They're struggling. They win 10 games and they have 6 straight sellouts. That's the type of baseball fan that we have here in Kansas City. It's a great sports town, as everybody knows. It's also a great baseball town. I could sit here and talk about the positives. I could talk about Daniel Lynch's most recent 2 outings. I could talk about Brady Singer shutting the Guardians down for 6 innings the other night. I could talk about the promise of Michael Garcia. But at the end of the day, until we start producing better results, those are the things that Q and JJ are focused on. I think I have total confidence in both of them. I think both of them, this is a challenging year for them. It's challenging for our players, but Q and JJ knew what they were taking on here. And what I appreciate about their approach, particularly with a young group like we have today, is really the growth mindset, keeping these players even and focusing on their processes and continuous improvement, and really having that growth mindset where you look at setbacks as growth opportunities and learning opportunities. So although it's challenging for them, I'm very pleased with the way that JJ and Q are handling themselves. But at the end of the day, this is a performance business. It's about results. Results in baseball are about wins and losses, and we have some ground to cover. The second thing I talked about is securing the future in Kansas City. We knew when we bought this team, we're approaching the end of a lease with Jackson County. We knew we were in an aging building. We knew, and I think as I've said to this group before, this is the most important thing that we'll have the opportunity to do while we have the privilege of being stewards of this franchise. This will be the largest public-private partnership in the history of Kansas City. It is, it has massive and immediate community impact, economic impact. And when I say immediate, that's also why we have a great sense of urgency about getting on with it. And that economic impact is not just 81 nights a year, it's 365 days a year. We're committed to a world-class ballpark and ballpark district that keeps us competitive with our peers nationwide and is also about staying competitive on the field in this business. We're in very close contact with our partners across the parking lot, the chiefs. As it relates to being in Jackson County, we're going to have to work in concert, and they're very, very much with us on that time. One thing I would just say is that as it relates to this process, no one's waiting on us. We are the urgent party in this process. And that's not a criticism of any of the other people that we're waiting on. They may have other things to deal with. The chiefs certainly, we're together with them. They understand our decision-making process. We understand theirs. As it relates to Jackson County, our ask of them is very clear, and it has been clear for some time. It's to extend the existing sales tax, the existing 3/8 sales tax, and really that's being used today to maintain 2 aging buildings, and to redeploy that capital to do something very special that will have immediate impact on Kansas City. That ask has been in place for some time. As it relates to Clay County, that is I'd make it clear that, they entered this process relatively recently, but I would just say that that is a serious bid. It's a serious idea, and it's one that we're taking very, very seriously. But I would just say again, I understand where other parties are, but I would just make clear that no one's waiting on us in this process. The third objective is what we're doing in the community. I talked about the Urban Youth Academy, Royals Charities, different ideas around cause marketing with our partners. The thing about that commitment to community, though, it is part and parcel. We talk about the stadium project. It's about being more competitive on the field. It's about making sure, actually this process, I say the Royals, but this process is to make sure that both of these franchises will thrive in this community for the next 50 years. But the community focus is really part and parcel of this project as well, and that we're committed to lifting all boats in this process, and we're committed to leaving no one behind. With that, I think, Sam, I'm happy to take questions.
Yeah. Sorry, just the order I saw the hands. Joel.
John, from a baseball standpoint, you knew going in this would be a difficult year. Are you where you thought? Is it worse? And how do you convince the fans to hang in there?
I think the results are worse than we thought they would be. We knew it'd be challenging. We have a young group. I think when I look down I think we're the youngest, certainly lineup as it relates to position players, and our pitching staff, particularly if you take Zach and Araldis, it's a pretty young group too. So I thought, but I did think we'd be further along. But that's also why it's important that when we say evaluation, we need to understand very clearly where we are, so that we can, as we think about what's coming up right now, the trade deadline, the All-Star break, the draft, the second half of the season, which will be further evaluation to see where we are, and then what are we doing in the off season to really try to accelerate and kind of get us, start to get us where we need to be.
So when you said just a couple of things, that no one's waiting on us, having talked to some of the people you guys are talking with, they certainly perceive it that way, as if they are waiting on a site selection among other, what's prevent, I guess that would mean you're waiting on something. What are you waiting on as far as trying to narrow down a site?
Well, we're waiting on a few people that have, that we understand their reasons that they're not as urgent as us about this. we think it's important that we have a sense of urgency about this because, this is a really important project and the time is now. And I worry a little bit about getting bogged down and this process slowing down and losing momentum. And we're in a good spot right now. The polling is very positive. And the polling's positive both in Jackson County and in Clay County. But when you say other people are, why don't you give me an example?
Well, I mean, like City Hall has expressed that they're waiting on a site selection from you guys before they move forward. They say that you haven't made a financial ask to them either.
Who haven't we made a financial ask?
At the City Hall level.
Well, okay, so let me talk about where we are in the financial ask as it relates to Jackson County. The extension of the 3/8 cent sales tax will raise between $300 million and $350 million of capital for each team with the extension. In addition to that, it will create an ongoing long-term maintenance fund like we have today, which is really important when you think about these projects. That's why these two buildings have stood the test of time. And when you think about the ongoing maintenance and the renovation, that's why we've hosted an all-star game, 2 World Series, and 5 consecutive AFC championship games across. That's a really important part of it. So we really need to know that that's secured. And when I say secured, I don't mean in the bank, but that we have partners that are ready to, and including the Chiefs, put this thing on the ballot and get that. And then we are in conversations with the city and the state. Met with the governor, met with a number of people over in Jeff City, and really but the 350 is really that kind of base financing. We'll have asks of the state and the city, and they if it's not specific, they certainly know the range, and then ownership will take the rest of that. Ownership will take, and so if you think about it, in round numbers, it's a $2 billion project. It's probably more than that when you think about infrastructure. Whatever we get from the public, we'll take the rest, and that number will be well in excess of $1 billion of private capital from ownership and our partners.
Just sorry, but you said a few things as far as like what has prevented you so far and continues to prevent you from selecting a site today?
Well, we need to have confidence about the financial structure of. We're down to 2 sites. I mean, I think that if you study processes like this, I guess that's the other thing. In fact, I have about 30 letters on my desk right now asking me to vote no on the transfer of the Oakland A's to Las Vegas. And I don't mean to call them out, but that's an example of a process where it drug on for a long time, right? And people waited. So. So I think if you think about that, we've moved at warp speed relative to how long these complicated projects usually take, and we're down to 2 sites. So, and we're going to be ready to get that down to 1. We hope by the end of the summer. But there's still some critical steps that we need to take with our partners to make sure we can do it.
John, what have you learned about the team in the first half, just beyond the results? Because at the beginning of the season, we were looking for improvement. So what have you learned about the roster?
About the roster? Well, I think I think there have been some pleasant surprises, but there's also been some disappointments, and I don't mean that like in specific players. And we've had some injuries certainly on the pitching side. But I think we have a core. I think we have a core of young talent. I think how deep that is something, perhaps we thought it was deeper, but I think we need to continue to find out how deep that is, who are the players who are going to be the core of the next playoff team, and then we're going to have to go get some more. Either via trades, via free agency. Certainly want to make sure that we're developing properly. There's some positive. I guess there's some positive things in our minor league system right now, particularly on the pitching side in terms of performance metrics. looking forward to maybe seeing some of those people up here in the second half, and that'll be an opportunity to further evaluate.
Do you foresee any more changes or additions being made organizationally to help this team get to where?
I think I would say that constantly we're looking at people, processes, systems, making sure that we're doing the right things, whether that's in evaluation or draft process, or scouting, or pro scouting, or international business. And we made some changes this last year, which I think were really important. And we've re-engineered our pitching system, which I feel really good about that, but it's not a quick fix. And that's going deeper into our system as well in terms of but all those things, I think, making sure the farm system is flourishing, making sure we're developing our talent. And, I think we've always, you hear everybody say it, pitching is the key to this. So making sure that we're, evaluating, acquiring, and developing pitching talent certainly as a priority.
Good morning, John. Recognizing this season, and the stadium district project is a generational conversation, I do wonder if you could elaborate on the point you made earlier about that this project would enable the team to be more competitive. In what ways? I understand there's some economic point there, but I wonder if you could just specify how this could help that.
Yeah. And when I say it's secure the future in Kansas City, the stadium is really what we can do here in Kansas City. I also think there's a lot of positive things going on in Major League Baseball right now as it relates to our global media strategy, our local media strategy. The Bally's or Sinclair bankruptcy, while it's caused some short-term turbulence, I actually think it's a blessing. You look at, I think San Diego the Padres are the only team that they have defaulted payment on rights, so they took their rights back. I think it expanded their reach by almost triple. Now their ratings aren't triple, but in terms of households that can access their games, they've tripled it. And so there's a lot going on there, but also when you think about we're working on a lot of things at Major League Baseball around competitive balance, that global media strategy and different ways to share revenue will also enhance, I think will add to competitive balance and help a franchise like ours. But I look at the Atlanta Braves. I'm not saying our market's the same as theirs, but you look at what they did with the Battery and the revenues that the impact on the company, on the team's revenues that's having, and they've utilized those dollars to really wrap up their core. I mean, if you look at Atlanta, they wrapped up their future pretty well. Now, no guarantee that they'll perform at the expected level, but they have extended some of their key guys. So I think it creates that type of opportunity for us that a new stadium will generate more revenue than this one does. In addition to that, we'll control surrounding real estate that will also generate revenue for the club. And if you this is not a business where you distribute cash to the investors. This is a business where you take your excess cash flow and you put it back on the field and you find ways to compete and do something special for the market here.
And one other thing for now, if I may, when this began, I think most of us thought about it this way. This was discussed as a downtown ballpark district, and I all due respect to the Clay County, and I'm sure it has its great appeal, but I don't think we would construe that as downtown, and maybe different than the spirit of what was initially thought, at least perceived by me. I wonder if you could speak to that difference and how you reconcile it.
I think we always said downtown or near downtown. If you look at Clay County, it would be a different project. You're talking about 85 acres versus 22 acres. East Village, 22 acres. It's about making the loop more dense. It's about going vertical. Out there in Clay County, it's probably more horizontal. More of I think you'd still have commercial, you'd have residential, you'd have hotel, you'd have mixed use, you'd have entertainment, but it would not be as vertical, obviously. But the one thing I think about as I've learned more about Clay County is it's another way to connect. It's really a way to expand how you think about that. That's a thriving, Clay County is a thriving county. North Kansas City is going to develop. They're going to develop, the people that acquired that land, there's not a baseball stadium up there. They're very comfortable owning that land. And there's lots of ideas about really connecting that community to downtown. You got the Current on the other side of the river. There's thoughts about developing the other side of the riverfront, but it's just interesting. You know, it's a highly motivated, and they've been very creative about coming to us. But you know, we've been partners with Jackson County, and we've been in Kansas City for 52 years. We value that relationship, and we certainly want to give them. We want them to give us our best shot, their best shot, and we're going to give them our best shot to do it there. But I think we should be clear. There's certainly an alternative to that idea.
Is there a chance, John, that people either in Jackson County or Clay County will be voting on a sales tax extension in Jackson County or creation in Clay in November?
So just make sure I understand the question.
I've heard rumblings about a potential sales tax extension vote in Jackson County or a sales tax vote in Clay County that would obviously have to be created in November.
You know, I think those ideas are out there. I would just tell you, as it relates to Jackson County, and as it relates to our conversations with the chiefs, we're thinking more about April in Jackson County. Really haven't had the specific conversations with Clay about timing. You know, they're doing a lot of work to kind of prove themselves to us and getting their arms around this.
I'll do one more. I also get the sense that there has to be a plan if a sales tax extension in this county fails. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think you always have to have options, right? I would just tell you that if the Royals and the Chiefs are together on an extension of the Jackson County, at least according to the polling that we have, it would be very surprising to us if it failed. No, I mean I'm humble about that because I think you have to, but I think the feedback that we're getting is if the question is keeping these two storied franchises in this community for the next 50 years, there's major support for that in Jackson County.
Mr. Sherman, regards to the polling and everything that's going on, if there's a potential vote, whether it be later this year, next year, what have you, considering the level of the team's performance right now, a lot of people are kind of ishy on, you know, why do we even move? Why do we invest in this team? Why should we put our money into it? What's your confidence level in this fact that maybe you should work on the team getting better first before maybe getting to the stadium or something?
No, I think that's a fair question. But I think, you know, we're playing the long game here. You know, team performance is what it is today. We're going to do what it takes to get it back. But this is a 50-year decision. This isn't what's happening now. I do know that we have fans that I'm getting that feedback, right? Why don't you spend money on the team, or why don't you fix the team before you ask us for? Well, we're going to get that done, but we also need to make sure that the future is secure in Kansas City. I think of it as for both of these franchises right now.
So I know a lot of fans would probably be asking, what's like a timeline where you're like, okay, if you're thinking about stadium first and team first or what have you, like, is it 2 years, 3? I mean, because people probably want to know, like, all right, if I'm going to invest my money into this, like, how long do I have to wait? Because I'm not going to invest my money to see a stadium where the team's still playing like they are now.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's a fair point. You know, we're not. This isn't. If we start today, we're still playing baseball here for the next 4 or 5 years. You know, depending upon when we have a vote, depending upon when financing is available, we could be downtown or near downtown, for either the 27 or the 28 season. So, we're going to do what it takes to improve this team over the next several years. This is. I know I'm not comparing us to anyone else, but this is exactly what the Chicago Cubs went through. This is what the Houston Astros went through. This is what the Baltimore Orioles went through. I mean, they lost 110 games just 2 years ago. It's what we call it evaluation, right? It's a deep evaluation, but sometimes to rebuild something, you got to tear it down a little bit, and you got to do, it's sometimes you got to get worse before you get better. And I don't mean that we accept that. We don't take that lightly. This is painful. Every loss hurts. The great thing is about baseball is when you go home at night. I drive when I left here. What was the game we let get away the other night against the Guardians? That was a painful way to lose that game for sure. And but you in baseball, if you lose today, you get to redeem yourself tomorrow. If you win today, you can't wait to get back there and try to do that again. So it's just part of the process. Don't accept it. Everybody's on this 24/7, but we're gonna make progress one way or another.
John, it often is thought that the elephant in the room is what the Chiefs want to do. How much influence do the Chiefs' plans have in the timing behind when you guys want to go to the voters? And what are the Chiefs telling you about when they're going to let people know what they want to do?
I would say, as far as the specifics about what I want to let them speak for themselves. But I would just tell you, we're in close communication on this. As it relates to Jackson County, they're going to make. When I say we'll be making our decisions by the end of the summer, I think they're on a similar timeline. I think that's their objective, to tell us or to talk about what they want to do in that similar time frame. But I would ask you to talk to them, and I'd really rather let them speak for themselves. But just we are working together for a solution in Jackson County.
Right. Well, you mentioned also that if the Chiefs are on the ballot with the Royals, that would certainly enhance its opportunity to be approved in Jackson County. Can you talk to me a little bit about that, or talk to your listeners?
Pardon?
If the Chiefs are on the ballot with you
Yes.
and a sales tax extension, that would be an easier sell to voters. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, I do think. I mean, it's the details of the polling. We did scientific polling. Both the Royals by themselves. The simple extension of the sales tax for both teams is pretty overwhelmingly positive. As you start to separate that, it becomes a little choppier because it's more change, and you haven't come up with the bigger solution. And the other thing about we really we're tied at the hip with the Chiefs here. Anything that we do to do something before the end of the season in 2030, the Chiefs have to approve. Anything they do, we would have to consent to, and then Jackson County has to be part of that process. So we're trying to get us all in a room and start rolling up our sleeves and working for a solution for both clubs.
Is that the primary hurdle to you guys making a decision about North Kansas City versus downtown Kansas City?
Is the primary?
Is that the hurdle, or is it actually government folks that are keeping you from making that final decision?
Well, I think I would say, look, I am, in a lot of ways, I'm sympathetic to both of them, but I understand where the Chiefs are. I understand that, we wanted to get this thing, that our urgency was greater, and they actually, I think, appreciate us being out there taking a lot of the bullets for this process. But, so they understand our decision making. They were on a different timeline, but they also understand, that we have to work together. We have to work together, whether we stay in Jackson County or whether we go to Clay County, if it's going to be before the end of 2030. And when I say work together, it's us, the Chiefs, and public officials from Jackson County.
And one last thing, it's just to follow up on Vahe a little bit. Most people believe the downtown ballpark would reinforce all the investment that's been made the past 20 years downtown. Do you think that's not a valid theory? What is your personal interest in seeing downtown Kansas City thrive? Not North Kansas City, but downtown Kansas City.
What's our interest?
Yeah, I mean, again, with the idea that ballparks would build on the momentum that's been going on downtown for the past 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's was our focus when we started this, from the time we bought the team. And we announced that we're, going through our evaluation. We announced we're in a process, I think, in September of 21. We hired lots of advisors, public finance advisors, real estate advisors, architects. And I think that concept of rounding out the central business district and going vertical with corporate office, with residential, with hotels, with some retail and mixed use, green space, really make that a special part of downtown. And then, there's opportunity over in Paseo West. If you think about 71, and we thought about a lot of things, urban planning, neighborhoods, connections. So that was the focus. And if we end up in East Village, that'll be great. And we'll accomplish all those things that North Kansas City, because the process didn't move along, maybe at the pace some of us wanted. Some people are creative up there. They're entrepreneurial. They're willing to put capital at risk. And there's an idea up there that's, although Kevin, it's different from, East Village, and it's certainly something that could work for the Kansas City Royals.
Mr. Sherman, I know for residents who live in Jackson County, look, they've invested, obviously, like you've mentioned, over the last 52 years. It seems as though, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's almost as though it's a proverbial gun being put to their heads on making sure that contact your local elected officials and extend something. Now, you just said that you pretty much put a timeline on when you're going to make a decision. I believe you said at the end of the summer. That being the case, obviously conversations have been had with the Chiefs. I know a few of us will probably ask Mark Donovan next month at training camp about this. But with that being said, what is Clay County offering that would make it more likable, for residents? Because if you're asking the voters here to extend it, they're expecting obviously for you to stay in Kansas City in the downtown area. But what is Clay County offering you all? Because I know you said if resident voters here in Jackson County extended, you'll cover the balance. What's being asked of Clay County?
Well, I think it's a similar structure. I think the early discussions on Clay County would be a similar structure, probably a sales tax in the county to create the base financing with contributions from the city and the state to kind of round that out. Infrastructure, there's more infrastructure that would need to be. I mean, it's another thing about the differences between the two locations, right? Downtown's got big infrastructure, big water, big sewer, big power, sidewalk, and egress and ingress. We'd have to do some work there. But in North Kansas City, there's some additional things that we need to do. But I would also say this: we didn't call on Clay County. We started a process. We engaged with Jackson County. We're still very engaged with Jackson County. I talked to Frank yesterday, and I talked to Mayor Lucas yesterday. But when you talk about investing this kind of capital, you get some interesting incoming phone calls. And we got a lot of ideas, and a lot of them were, I wouldn't say had any traction. Some were good ideas that were creative. The location was wrong. Some were just maybe flaky ideas. This one in Clay County was one that was interesting. But we certainly didn't jump their way when they first brought it to us, but they have kind of stayed the course and continued to make it interesting. But again, it's an alternative. Now, these are both alternatives. So.
But as you mentioned, though, you've had conversations, I would imagine, with both counties. That being said, you already know what you can get out of Jackson County, but for Clay County to even come into the conversation, they would have had to put some kind of offer or what they feel like they can get past with their voters. I know because if you're going to make a decision by the end of the summer, you're not just going to say Clay County is where you're going to go, North Kansas City is where you're going to go, and then try to come up with some language on what you're going to put before the voters.
In Clay County?
Yes.
No, they have some ideas, but we're not as far along there. And also, I would say in Jackson, the story is not over in Jackson, and that I talked about the base financing, and that's really all we felt like an extension of the existing tax, a continuation of using that capital that was already in place and already approved was a reasonable ask of Jackson County. So that's what, but we expect that the city and the state would add to that as well. And I would expect that both of them will be comparable from a financial perspective.
And
That's the question.
just one last question. I know a lot of fans who come to Kaufman for the first time, and when they ask about the new stadium stuff, when they come to the ballpark, they look at it and they just, when I come to the press box, I'm always looking out, and I'm just seeing how beautiful this facility is. When you say that it's crumbling or something, it's kind of hard to imagine because taxpayers have been keeping the upkeep. And when you look at just this Hall of Fame room and when you go to the stadium, it's hard for people to imagine that you need a new baseball stadium when they come here and see the stadium for the very first time. When people ask you that, what is your explanation to out of town people who come in to watch the Royals and to see come to Sin for the first time, and they're trying to question, why do you need a new ballpark?
It is a beautiful ballpark. I feel the same way when I come here. I still get goosebumps every time I'm on the field, and even though I do that a lot now. But it's 50 some years old, and it's going to be 60 years old at the end of the decade. It does have some structural and mechanical problems. We have done a great job investing in the stadium, primarily from a fan-facing perspective. But even with that, we're not competitive with modern stadiums, whether it's club space, whether it's eating space, whether it's premium areas. And so we're really behind the curve here. And at some point, I'd like to get the commissioner out here and really let him and really let this group hear from him directly about, what are the standards that we need to make sure that we're keeping up with in Major League Baseball. So this has been a great place to play. I've been a season ticket holder for a long time. Had lots of memories, really over a couple of generations of my family. So I get all that, but this is an old building. It's got problems. It's also not in the right place for baseball. So although I hear from fans all the time, don't move the stadium, move the stadium. I get that feedback all the time. But what I try to say to people that say don't move the stadium, I would say we're going to make it easy. If we can't make sure that it's easy to get in and out and that it's safe, we're not going to take our fans anywhere with those things. And that's the kind of stuff right here, right? Congestion, parking. But it's time to leave the cab. I guess I can't emphasize that anymore, although I agree that it's a beautiful, if you sit in a suite or you sit up in the press box, the fountains, it's really quite striking in terms of its beauty as you look down on the field.
And I apologize, just one last question. This is something totally different, but obviously in the state of Missouri, we still have sports betting here. What do the Royals plan to do to try to, because I know the Chiefs are adamant about sports betting in Missouri. What are you all willing to do? Because there seems to be one or two legislators in Jeff City that's keeping it. What type of, full court press will the Royals do to try to get this across the finish line?
We're in that full court press with the Chiefs, with the Blues, with the Cardinals. I'm looking at our general counsel in the back. There is an obstructionist there that's tying it to some other legislation. I don't know whether we need to wait till, I don't know the process to break through here, but we're all over that. And it is frustrating because we are now surrounded by states that have sports betting. We think that's an enhancement to our game, to football, to the other, how many professional teams do we have in Missouri now, right? We got 6, I think. The Chiefs, Royals, Cardinals, the new soccer team over there, the Blues. And so we've got a meaningful contingent that's spent a lot of time in Jeff City trying to get that thing across the goal line, and so far we haven't got it done.
I want to respect the baseball availability in about 10 minutes, but we got time for a few. What do you say to fans who look at professional sports teams and say, owners are making money, why don't they just finance their stadium themselves? Why do they ask the public to pay for professional sports? What do you say to them?
Yeah, that's a fair question. The way I look at it, particularly in a market like this, I think it's important that this is a public-private partnership. And I think that we're going to deliver meaningful community benefits in public benefits. And that'll be part of any agreement that we do, and we would expect to be held accountable to deliver those benefits. But the really important thing for me, we talked about why we bought the team, keep baseball in Kansas City for decades to come. I hope I own this team for a long time. I hope we own this team for a long time. But at the point where we decide to sell it to the next group of good people, I want this team to have a long-term lease in place, with the public in Kansas City. And so that's part of, and in fact, I wished, in a lot of ways, I wish we had a long-term lease and a modern building when we bought the team. But that's really our job, is to make sure that when we get a new stadium, we're competitive with our peers. And I think making sure that the next owner, whoever it is, or next set of owners, and actually hopeful that I think the way we put our group together, an idea was that the successor could come within our group. And that, when you think about the legacy of ownership in Kansas City, think about Ewing Kaufman a lot. What he did to make sure this team stayed here, what he did to get it here was one thing. The year after the A's left in '69, or they left in '67, he got the franchise in '69. A lot of marshaling of resources. But what he did when he gave it to the community foundation, it was not, I've said this before, it was not good for the on-field performance, was not good for the team, but it's why this franchise is still here in Kansas City. And then when David Glass called me in early 2019, that was in the spirit of Ewing Kaufman. So not only we buy the team and we're committed to doing this, in some ways we felt like we were selected for this mission to make sure that baseball is in Kansas City, that we stay a Major League Baseball team town. And I believe that the public part of that is important. We want to be reasonable about it. We're not trying. This will be the largest investment from any sports team. In fact, if you look at the history of these two franchises, I think it was 100% public financing when it was established. I think for the renovations, I think the Royals put in $25 million. I think the Chiefs put in $75 million and took the overage. We're going to invest in excess of $1 billion, and we're going to take the overage. And so, and we're going to deliver massive public benefit for that. And we think that's worthy of getting a public partner. And I want to make sure the next owner has a long-term lease whenever we transfer ownership of this team at some point in the future, which I hope is a long time from now.
Jamie.
Hey, Mr. Sherman, what do you say to a fan or a taxpayer who understands, like, hey, I gotta reach in my pocket, I have to pay my hard-earned dollars? How can you, help them feel assertive and comfortable, like this is the right thing to do?
As it relates to the state.
Yeah, that's the thing, yes.
I think these franchises, as I've said a lot, they're really important to the fabric, to the culture of a market like this. I think we're the second smallest market with an NFL franchise and an MLB franchise. I think only Cincinnati is smaller, and that's close. I think it's an important part of the community. We would expect to deliver public benefit in excess of that investment if you look at it in the aggregate. And we have information out there. It's on what's the website of the stadium? KCBallparkDistrict.com. There's information there about the economic impact. We're creating a huge amount of jobs, billions of dollars of labor output in the project itself, and then ongoing. And we believe that the benefits to the community will far exceed the investment that the community makes in it. And if that makes sense. Also in Jackson County, I think we're one piece of feedback we have had in our conversation with Jackson County is to make sure that we're doing things for the citizens of Jackson County, right? That they have discounted pricing opportunities, they have other things, and we have that in place today, but I think it's misunderstood actually.
Mr. Sherman, I think there's some pretty good poison pills in the lease about leaving the county. So how much of a deterrent?
Before 2030.
Before 2030. So if you leave before that, how much of a deterrent would that be for Clay County and a hurdle for them to overcome?
Well, I mean, any of that would have to be negotiated. I mean, all this is a negotiation, right? And we're gonna live up to our obligations under the lease, right? And that's through the end of baseball in 2020. If there's an opportunity to move before that, that'll be negotiated. Clay County will agree to it, and the Chiefs will
The
agree
price
to
for
it.
everything, sure. With the Chiefs, two separate places, you're not going to be here. Two separate leases then, but your plan is to have one, if it's Jackson County, still the same tax, but you can work it that way, but you'll have to separate on the lease, correct?
Right. We think that going forward, these leases will be, they're actually separate leases today, but there's the most favored, there's cross
Right.
checks, right? Most favored nation clauses and things like that. But we think, and if we go to East Village, that these can be two totally separate leases. Might even have different termination dates, depending upon what the Chiefs do, in terms of their evaluation of renovation versus build new and the amount of capital they intend to spend. But we think they're standalone.
And a quick baseball question. You mentioned some of the teams that have kind of gone through this. The word tanking has been mentioned on many of them. You said here today, kind of tear it down to build it back up. Are you guys tanking right now?
No, I don't. I'm not sure the definition of tanking, but
You feel what you're doing is different than what maybe the Astros did?
well, what I was saying that they went through a lot of pain, and they did well in the draft. They developed their players. They won 2 World Series, and same with it's just, and I see what. I think if you think about what could we do right now, and what could I have done in the off season, wouldn't have made any sense to go sign a big player until we know we have the nucleus, and we've got to have that nucleus, and then we'll figure out what the remaining pieces of the puzzle are. And we're going to be more than willing. We're ready to spend some money, but it's about really the missing pieces of the puzzle to make sure that we're ready to compete and get back in the postseason.
Guys, we got Clubhouse open in just a couple of minutes. John, we'll talk plenty going forward. We finish up with Greg.
John,
Yeah, go ahead.
thanks, Sam. This is in regards to your remarks on community. There appears to be some labor issues with service employees who work in the community that you're trying to connect with. There is no community benefits agreement, nor does there appear to be any negotiations for a community benefits agreement. And there are issues with the Urban Youth Academy. How concerned are you about the optics of those community issues?
Well, I'll try to do them in the order you asked them. As it relates to the labor negotiations, that's a labor negotiation. I mean, it is the idea. I mean, we are negotiating in good faith. We treat our employees extremely well. It's not unusual. It's not a criticism, but it's not unusual for labor unions to kind of go to the media and try to negotiate in public a little bit to bring pressure. They also, that group, I think, tried to, in that media release, they also tried to tie it to the stadium. It has nothing to do with the stadium negotiations with them going on right now. So I would say that, our labor law, I would refer you maybe with more specifics to our labor people, but that's been a good faith negotiation. I think we're on the cusp of, in fact, I think we've already settled a couple of those agreements. I think we are settled on wages, and I think they're going to be really happy. In fact, I know they're going to be really happy about the result. But I read that stuff about, look, when we were at our most difficult period financially, right when the pandemic started, we didn't lay off anybody, we didn't furlough anybody. We took management pay cuts and shared sacrifice. We paid our minor leaguers. We turned the Urban Youth Academy into a community center, a vaccine clinic, a polling place. We created opportunities for children that couldn't go to their buildings to keep their education going. So and as it relates to you had the Urban Youth Academy, what was the other one?
Community benefits agreement.
Yeah, the community, that's, the details of that are actually premature. We definitely are working on the structure of a community benefits agreement. it will be one that's, I think there's always negotiation in that, but in terms of, we have a commitment to be kind of first tier as it relates to minority minority and women-owned businesses. We're sensitive to, we're listening and we're hearing, the people that are paying attention to us because of this project, whether it's livable wages or dignified housing. Those are things that we're sensitive to anyway. So, but I would say on the CBA, the collective, the community, that's premature. I would say the labor negotiations are normal course, and they don't reflect the way that we treat our people. I mean, I would just say that emphatically. And I would say, look at our behavior, not just what I say. And then as it relates to the Urban Youth Academy, that's a really important part of our mission here. And we're going to get it right. I'm aware of some of the concerns about, the baseball play down there, who's playing it, but we're going to get that right. That's an important part of our mission. And we continue to do really good things.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it.